You got new headphones, Pete?
Yeah, look at me.
All right, there you
Are
go.
they? What
Yeah.
what's that? What are they? You've been copying me? No. Hey, they're posh. Well,
I
posh.
remember what my headphones are now.
So,
Sony.
Right, hold on.
Mine are like
Wires and stuff. everywhere.
UFOs. No, I'm like Princess Layla or something, aren't I?
Just Layla.
Leia?
Leia.
Pardon?
We're gonna have a chat for the next 30 minutes about songwriting,
Cool.
Yay!
which I'm really excited about. I've had this conversation with Nigel a couple of times in the past. In fact, we had a conversation about this over curry when we were writing the book.
Oh, okay. Right.
And,
That's always a
which you
good
probably
place
don't
to have these
remember, but-
conversations about.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting one, this, because I want to find out not just your perspectives on you both writing songs and quite a substantial body of songs now, but we're going to have a little conversation, I think, about some of your other
Me.
favourite songs. And, well, you must have written a bit of something, Steve.
All my songs are country and western. They're not Electrasy.
There was
It's
a
like-
good one
I might do
called-
an album
what-
one day, but it'll
What
be
was
like,
that one called, Steve? Was
releasing-
it called Plot?
Yeah, I
yours-
did a couple with Alex in between. When was that? The Small World, actually. After we'd lost the
Right.
deal, I think.
There was a
But you
song
say
called
after you've
Plot
lost
the
that I
same
remember
player.
liking.
Yeah. I've done some demos, but never really. I've never been able to bloody finish my songs off. Probably this is a good place to ask for advice. Actually,
Oh,
While
so
you're
we're
here.
going to use.
we never
we're gonna
talk
use,
about it, do we?
No?
We're going to use
No.
Nigel as a clinic,
Yeah,
the Steve clinic.
yeah.
Just before we start talking to Nigel, who's the genuine songwriter in this pack of fools, what is it that made you start and not stop writing stuff then, Steve?
What to start writing?
And just not finish anything?
No, I've got loads of songs. It's just getting them to a point. I can't sing like very well for shit, basically. So I've got no confidence. I mean, fair play to Nige, because it's like how he's managed to like come from not singing at all to have so much confidence into singing so much. Oh yeah, just like can't sing really. Got lots of ideas and stuff, but finishing them off, God. Don't struggle with lyrics really. It's just like finishing the songs is hard.
So where do you get your lyrics from then?
My head. They sort of. That's an interesting thing actually. I don't know how. I mean, I tend to start with like strumming out some chords and then sort of start humming a bit of a tune or something, and then words develop out of sound and stuff, syllables, and then kind of develops into a story organically. I think there was a time actually I had a whole song in a dream, and I didn't have a guitar, and it sounded amazing when I woke up, and like just because I didn't record it down within like half an hour, it just got forgotten. It's probably the best song I've ever written, start to finish.
But for you then, Nigel, how do you start? Like where do you start?
Process is very, very similar. What Steve described, that kind of like you're playing something and some phrase or some syllabic sort of sound. I always call it the onomatopoeia of it, right? It just sort of pops in and it's a combination of what's coming out of your mouth and what you're playing. Like it's not like, oh, I've got these chords or, oh, I've got this melody. It's like, no, the two things are together. And it's also, yeah, some sort of syllables or something. It's like, oh, that kind of does something. It triggers something in your brain. And then it kind of just goes from there. And it's the same process Steve just described. You kind of play it around, develop it out, and then hopefully some lyrics arrive that give you enough to kind of go on a story with them where they sort of, actually say something and aren't just a bunch of syllables. But for me, I think I mentioned this before, that whole watching that Beatles thing with Paul McCartney, watching him kind of thrash out, come together, and he was sort of going, and he was literally doing exactly what I've always done, which is kind of go, and you sort of know the sound of what you want, but you don't know what the words are. You have to kind of discover those. And it was amazing actually watching somebody else like Paul McCartney do that and realize, oh, this is how everybody actually writes songs. Because that's not what you think when you're younger. You just assume that they all magically write them perfectly and they all come out absolutely fantastic. And you don't think that, no, it's this process of kind of banging around, having a bit of an idea and then just trying it and going, no, that's terrible, or that bit doesn't work. And, so I wish I'd seen that clip 30 years ago. It would have given me a heck of a lot more confidence to write songs even earlier and realized that, oh, this is actually how everybody does it, this kind of bumbling process.
But do you think everybody does it like that?
I mean, there's some differences, like, when you hear like Elton John and Bernie Taupin talking, where you've got like one person who writes the words and then somebody puts music to it and somehow they end up at this. That's obviously a very different process. I have no idea how that works. I couldn't even begin to start writing words without music. I wouldn't know where to begin with any of that, right?
But when you listen to a lot
of people,
no,
it just doesn't even sort of
seems alien, doesn't it?
In my brain. Yeah, it's like, but, there's enough people out there that you listen to, like you listen to Nirvana, like Kurt Cobain's songs, the Finnish song, and it doesn't sound very far removed from someone kind of going, and it's like, yeah, he obviously wrote songs like that, right? Because the end result, and I think they're brilliant. I love it. I think it's awesome. Huge influence on how I wrote a whole lot of stuff, especially a lot of the early Electrasy sort of punkier stuff. And
just mumble.
But yeah, it's that sort of, the words are less important than the sound of the words almost. It's difficult to describe.
So I've got one challenge to that. Have you ever seen David Bowie's process for writing songs?
I know his is a little different. Yeah.
So he did I'm probably going to get the word wrong. It's like, I think they call it like Dadoism or something, where he'd basically get a magazine or a newspaper and then he'd cut it up into strips.
Cut stuff out and throw them together. I think
loads of cocaine and then just put them down and then basically go, I'm an alligator, I'm a instigator, I'm a whatever. And he would
but I think a lot of that, though,
the music for the weird poem.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it, though, is what he's doing there. And again, I'm sort of pushing my thoughts onto what, kind of thing. But I think he's almost using that as like a tool to get started with, or to throw inspiration into the mix. The final sort of way of actually putting it together, I think, is going to be pretty similar, but it's almost like you need more raw material to throw into the mixer. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to literally post things together and then stick with exactly what it says. You're going to use that, start playing it and going, oh yeah, that works. Oh, that's kind of cool. And sort of use that as your sort of launching point. And you can, do that today with a bunch of other different tools as well, which is kind of neat. And that can be helpful, because I definitely get a little stuck with lyrics sometimes. So, it's good.
Steve, have you ever received a sort of rough demo from Nigel and gone like, oh my God, those lyrics? What were you thinking?
Not lyric wise. Morning Afterglow, I thought that was a bit rubbish when I first said that. Well, I guess it was like our first songs were like, I don't know, sort of quite grungy, shoegazy, My Utopia, Planetoid, Downer. And then probably suddenly it's like, oh, there's this ballad. And it's like, oh, no, it's just like a bit, not very energetic, kind of threw it away. And then, it was Ali that was like, wow, amazing. So, that would have been in the trash can from me. But happy to eat my words. Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
But when we'll talk about like writing songs, like music, but do you ever pay that much attention to the lyrics, or are you just hungry to get going with like riffs and music?
No, it's like definitely like every song that, whether it's Nigel's obviously written most of them, whether it's Nigel, Ali or Alex, I always approach it from the point of, I've written the song. It's my song. I want to own that I feel what the song's written about, like the whole feel of the words and the melody and everything. And then, I just want to make it, add something to it that's really special for me inside. And hopefully everyone else can do that. And, as a band, and then it's better. Is the goal, than it might have been without my input, I hope. But sometimes it might be not playing at all, on something and giving someone else space and stuff. So,
well, because the other thing that I've had this incredible privilege to kind of sit back and watch and admire over the last couple of years at least is as a group, your songwriting process is pretty wild. Like I'd say everybody has, like, you take the raw kind of material off Nigel and then you all go away and you all put your own spin on it and then you all come back and you throw it all in and then you mix it around and then Nigel does some production and mucks around with whatever it is and then somehow a song comes out of it. Like that for me just blows my mind. Is that because you've all been working with each other for so long that you're just comfortable with it?
I think to a large degree, but I think it's worth separating out. There's two very different things at work there, right? So the song doesn't necessarily change through that process. The song sort of is almost like an abstract thing that you could literally, back in the day, write down on a piece of sheet music with chords, words, structure. That doesn't change through the process. What changes then is the arrangement, the performance, the way it's recorded, which the end result is a song that exists then, sort of the thing. But when people are talking about songwriting, they're really more talking about the sort of the abstract song that anybody could cover and do in a completely different way. You could do it in different instruments, but it would be the same chords, same sort of words, melody, yada, yada, yada. So it's like what we do as a band, what you're describing there is really the way that we sort of then arrange it or make it or create this finished thing. But the actual sort of songwriting piece of that doesn't really, I mean, sometimes it might change a little bit. Like people will play it and they'll be like, oh, you know what, we really need an extra verse in here, or we need, wouldn't it be great if, and back in the early days, we probably would have done a whole lot more of that, even where, because, what Steve was talking about, the difficulty of finishing off songs. I've gotten a lot better at doing that. But back in the early days, I'd also have stuff that would be like, well, we got a good verse and a chorus, and then it goes batshit crazy. Right? And it's like, what are we doing, right?
I'm still stuck on that, see?
Yeah, and it just takes a lot of practice of kind of working through that. And back in the day, when we knocked stuff around, we would have knocked the edges off on that and kind of worked it into shape. These days, I don't need as much of that to happen. I know how to get it to the end zone in terms of that song, but then in terms of what you're talking about as a song, which is the output that you actually listen to, right? Then that's where the band then takes what is almost just an idea, really, and makes it real in a very real and awesome way. And that's really, for me, where a massive amount of the fun comes into it, because I don't know what it's going to end up sounding like exactly. And I really don't know what the hell I'm going to get back from Steve.
But how much of that is also about your, and I'm just going to say it out loud, how much of it, because we're all friends, how much of that is also about your kind of ego getting out of the way, and, you're not the same musician that you were 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Absolutely.
And now you can be a lot more chilled with your song, your process, your lyrics. You're kind of like,
totally. I think there's a large part of that, and also it's very different to be trying to do something when you feel like there are things that already exist that capture something in the right way, right? When you're making, for example, our debut album, we're doing like, Beautiful Insane. I didn't feel at the time that anything we'd recorded really captured exactly what I wanted it to capture, right? So therefore, there's a much bigger struggle of like, my God, we have to get this right. Whereas now there's stuff that I'm listening to that we've done, that we've released, that I'm like, yeah, I like that. I'm proud of that. That's good. Right. So therefore, stuff that we're doing now, I'm not trying to say, oh my God, this is it. We still haven't gotten anything right. It's more now sort of going, hey, let's get more stuff right. And I know that just feels very different somehow. There's a big difference between knowing that there's stuff that exists that we feel like, yeah, that actually, we did something really good there that works. And now we're just trying to do more of it rather than earlier on. It's like, nothing we've ever done feels good. We have to try and get something good out of this process is a really different and not a great way to be working, to be honest with you. It doesn't necessarily produce good results.
The way I look at it is like when Nigel's written a song, it's like he's the sponge, okay, with so he's got his acoustic and the vocal, so it's really basic. That's the foundation. Yeah, that the sponge is the main of it, that everything is built from. And then we're just like putting the jam in the middle, a nice layer of cream and like icing, fancy bit of piping, and Ali's the little person on top, you know.
Little wedding cake.
Baking a cake.
Yeah.
There you go.
I thought you meant like a water sponge.
Next to Nige.
I was totally with you on the water sponge, Pete. That's where I was
wondered
at.
where it was going. I thought you were saying that Nige was like sucking in the world, and then you were going to.
And then the record company comes in and smashes it all to pieces.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what? So I was about to ask that question. How much more difficult is it when the record label puts a producer into the mix on songwriting?
I mean, it's been really like every producer we've ever worked with has been very different, and they've all worked in slightly different ways with that. But interestingly, I mean, most of the producers have been, all of them have been very sort of like, okay, great, maybe they've had some suggestions or, you know, wanted to try and edit or something. Matthew Wilder, I think, did some really cool edits on Renegades. We've actually gone back to how it was originally, which is nice, but he had some suggestions which I think definitely worked and were cool.
But then even like, because Matthew Wilder produced or co-produced In Here We Fall, but basically when you listen to because a lot of those recordings actually came out of Small World, so it was kind of the album was pretty much all there already. When you listen to before Matthew got involved and added stuff, it was already sounding very, very In Here We Fall.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Well, we learned from, you know, you talk about the first album, Beautiful Insane, Pete, where we recorded basically the album with John Sweet, and then we went to try and re-record it again. We learned from that process. So in Here We Fall, we literally recorded by ourselves in Small World, in Yeovil, took those recordings and worked around them in LA, and in many cases we kept, like, for example, Renegades, the rap vocals were recorded by Ali on an SM58 in Small World Studios in Yeovil. Bust Out, a lot of that was recorded in Yeovil. You know, so most of the times the drums we re-recorded, some of the guitars, you know, filling it out. But a lot of if there's an iconic part that we liked the vibe of, we kept it, and we just worked around that. So for that very reason, because the challenge with Beautiful Insane was there was all this stuff that we really liked on these other recordings that we didn't have the wherewithal or the technology at the time to go, well, let's keep that and let's just redo the drums, you know, which now would be the main reason we redid anything of that first album was we just felt the drums sounded a little bit lightweight from that recording process. So it was like, well, we've got to have bigger drums. And most of the rest of it, now I wouldn't have touched any of it. I'd have just gone, well, let's just make the drums sound better. But back then it was we didn't have the skills to do that, didn't know how to do that or anything, you know. But
let's do the Rogues Gallery. So you had Robin Miller on the first album.
Yeah.
Who's a phenomenal producer.
Yeah, he I mean, most of those songs, of course, were well finished before he got involved. So there really wasn't a lot of songwriting done in that sort of process. The second album, to be honest, most of the songwriting input didn't even come from Matthew. It came from Pete Gambarger, A&R guy from Arista, who poked and prodded me to say, we can't have every single song on this album about aliens. You need more songs, right? So I wrote Naked and Special Forces and a couple of others when he was just basically, you can't have everything about aliens. I wish we had everything about aliens, would have been great. But he had almost more input in sort of trying to shape the songs on the album. Again, by the time we got to Matthew Wilder and started working on that, everything was pretty much already there, you know. And then David Bianco, I mean, that was a little bit of a different record. That was hard in lots of ways because definitely...
That was on Wired for Dreaming, right?
Wired for Dreaming, the songs were not as well worked out going into that process at all. We were trying to write some stuff, and he definitely was helping and trying to sort of, trying to push us to sort of finish stuff off. But it was a struggle. It was tough. We were, in my brain, certainly, we were just not ready to make a record at that point. It's like, I think of how prepared we were in the previous 2 albums. We were, the songs were well set. They were being performed. We knew how they went. We were ready to record them. Whereas with that album, it's like we were in the middle of touring something else, and suddenly it's like, oh, no, come off the road and go make another record. And I'm like, where are the songs? I don't know that we
Well,
have
that was
them,
the crazy thing, wasn't it? It was because like we were on a real high with like how In Here Before was going on like radio, like 18
totally.
weeks in Rhode Island, and it was taking off in Japan, and really it was, we were getting MTV, people coming to gigs, good support slots, big gigs, and then for just to stop as we were like on a,
very much on that
was
sort
very
of,
much
exactly.
happening. That was quite a, it's not like we had been, like you say, Nige, we hadn't been thinking about
making another record,
whole load of songs up for the album. But then again, I absolutely love Wired for Dreaming. It's so like organic, and the way Dave Bianco knew tape and microphones and.
Yeah, but I think again, see, that's the sonics. The sonics of it are lovely. The production is nice in terms of the bandiness, but song-wise, there's a few good things on there, but it's not as strong song-wise.
I don't know,
I don't know. See, this is where we're going to disagree. I've got I'm the fan in the middle, and I think it's your strongest album.
Well, there you go. That's great. But that's awesome.
Lyrically and musically, there's something on that album that is really quite authentic.
Yeah,
I'm not saying the others aren't.
Right.
It captured a moment. There's something more kind of emotional about it as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it's great that it lands in some way with everybody. I struggle with that one. It just doesn't land for me at all. Like I love listening to the sound of it, but song-wise, like I think this is this thing about the songs being like an independent entity almost from the sound of them. If you sit down with an acoustic guitar and play some of those things, they don't have the same strength as some of the other songs and different things. The production, the performance, the way they're recorded then has a lot of strength in terms of the emotion and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, for me, from a songwriting point of view, I don't feel as much from those ones as from some others. So.
Interesting. You like that album as well, don't you, Steve?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I've played it so much. I feel it like it never really got the light of day either, because we Arista had thrown us out after the towers went down in New York, and then we all went back to our relative countries, and that was it. It just felt like it was like a forced ending, really. Not that we fell out at all, ever,
No. We would never have stopped. It was
just everything stopped.
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
literally someone pressed the stop button for years, and there's nowhere else to take it, really. And of course, it was like the album was all caught up in record industry contracts and stuff. So it was only the fact that Arista hadn't actually released it, that the rights reverted to us after a certain period of time, that so we had to like get lawyers involved in that and then release it in 2008. So that's like, then we dropped 2002, I think it was.
Nice 6-year delay there. Just
so yeah,
6 years with those songs in limbo.
Yeah. That was a pretty. It's quite interesting actually speaking to Ali about that period of time, and like Headspace and stuff, and how a lot of mental health stuff going on around that time, because we'd put everything in basically.
Yeah.
So did you feel under pressure to do that album? Does that affect the songwriting process or the?
To a large degree, I mean, it wasn't even a question of pressure. It was like, you're coming off the road and you have to go in the studio and make another album now. Yes, pressure, but it was almost like more than pressure. It was just like, this is what's happening. Whereas, like, for the second album, for example, I was talking about, like, Pete Gambog, the A&R guy. We spoke about the songs at some depth and length before going in to record them. Whereas with that album, it was literally just the record company kind of saying, let's just put them away somewhere and just, we can forget about it for 6 months and then we'll come back and refigure it out later. I think we had that other junior A&R guy who kind of looked after us for a bit. His name Josh or something. He came and visited once or twice, but there really was no discussion or very little anyway by comparison. There wasn't like the record company were not really involved, apart from basically just signing some checks to keep us out of the way while they kind of redecided their business plans going forward, which ultimately did not include us. You know what I mean? You could tell we were no longer kind of, one minute we're sort of on the inside track and we're very aware that, you know, our management could get hold of people at the record company at a moment's notice, right? It's easy to get hold of people. Everyone's interested, and suddenly they can't get anybody on the phone. It's just like, yeah, you guys go over here, do this for a bit. And so there really wasn't that kind of discussion about the songs or whether we were ready or none of that. It was just like, nope, go and do this. And, you know, we'll sort of see you when you're done and we'll see what we're going to do. So it just, it felt very different. So for me, it was not the most inspiring sort of circumstances under which to make a record. So I think probably a lot of that colors my ability to listen to it even. You know what I mean? Because it's like with the other records, we were in such a joyous place of doing it with a sense of purpose and direction, if that makes sense, right? You know what I mean? Like you could sort of feel the future unfolding as, like, you know, the second album, we got to do pre-production in Yeovil, then we went to America to make it. I mean, you just feel that kind of sense of progression, right? It was a lot of fun. And that was awesome. That was very cool. That you kind of really feel that coming through. And I think that comes through then in the way that you're playing and recording and doing all that sort of stuff. Whereas with that album, it was just the opposite of that. It just felt like, oh God. It's like,
also, we didn't have a lot of time in the studio for Wired for Dreaming to actually develop things, because the bulk of it was recorded in a 2-week period.
Yeah.
Of course, like, studios aren't cheap, you know, plus having, you know, people as well. So you can't really be developing songs in the studio at that sort of level. They need to be
that's
done.
Not a good use of studio.
We didn't have a long run in to it as a pre-production and then record in the studio. It was like, it was very condensed amount of time. Probably a shame, if we had, you know, maybe a couple more months to develop the pre-production first and then go in for 2 weeks. Who knows?
Well, let's. So I'm interested. So fans, leave a comment down there, because I think a lot more fans are big advocates for that album than you realise in the repertoire. Let's whiz forward, right? So let's go to the other side. Totally different song process, not just songwriting, but production, the whole damn shebang.
Production
totally
process, completely different. Yes.
How did that one come about?
So that's probably my favorite record that we've made to date. So just FYI, like I think it actually captures in a bizarre way, it captures the bandiness of the band, but has the strength of songwriting that kind of goes with it. So for me, I listen to that and I sort of enjoy it more than anything we recorded in the past, which is cool. But that obviously, from a songwriting process, no real different, apart from the fact that in the intervening 20 years, I've kind of learned how to finish things off a little bit, which is good. And there was a lot of inspirational moments in the songwriting for that album, right? Like it sort of, and one of the things that I do quite a bit is I will send Ali stuff that's much more unfinished than I will share with rest of them. Like when the rest of the band hears stuff, it's normally probably bounced around a couple of times, but I will share with Ali, like, sort of like, hey, here's this bit, right, with like a verse and maybe a few words, and he will give me feedback like he always used to. And you know, sometimes that feedback will be him not responding to an email for a week, which means I know that he thinks it's crap, right? So that's a good thing. It's like, you know, getting that kind of stuff. So there was definitely some of that where I'd sort of play him some stuff, and if he gets back within a day going, oh my God, that's absolutely amazing, we want it, I'm like, okay, good, that's a good one, right? So it's like, with something that there were tracks there that, that I had for a while, loved them, and we did them, and then we just, for me, the exciting part, and certainly on one of the things that I enjoyed the most, actually, Steve, on that album, was getting back what you would send me then for your guitar, which would be lots of tracks, some of which were wildly experimental, some of which kind of kept more sort of like, okay, here's a bit that I was kind of expecting you might do, but then actually being able to, and this is the beauty of having the time, to sort of then construct the part from all of this stuff, a lot of it very ethereal, huge effects, all sorts of really cool, interesting stuff, but then not having to work with anybody else or tell another engineer, hey, can you clip that bit from there, but to actually just be able to do it, right? To be actually able to do it myself, listening, taking all of these bits and going, I like this piece, let's move that and do it, and creating that. I was thinking specifically about like Breaking Away, for example, where the stuff that Steve does on the intro is that just sounds like no other guitarist in the world would have played what you played, and that's for me is the stuff that makes that album then how like songwriting is strong. The songs definitely got bashed around a little bit before being finished, and then I finished them nicely. Had input from Ali as we were sort of developing these things, but then performance-wise, there's just all this cool stuff that is exactly what used to happen. When we had our own 16-track and we'd sort of mash up Renegades in the bedroom, taking what Steve had done and sort of looping things. That's how we used to work, right? And when we sort of started working with John Sweet, that was the same thing. The magic that happened with John Sweet was because we were in his studio day after day for months on end, just us and him, kind of going, oh, let's do this, let's take this, and making this stuff come to life, right? It's that process of making it come to life through the production that for me is such a joyous part of making the music. And on that album, on To the Other Side, we're able to just do so much of it, and we do to this day. That's what we're working on stuff right now, and it's the same process where it's like I don't know where it's going to end up, and I love it because of that. Because it's different from how I might have
on the album.
On To the Other Side.
Yeah, you've got to pick one.
Got to pick one. Probably, I mean, Aurora,
I just got
or Falling from the Stars.
I just got a blank. Like
I
I
don't know.
had.
It's probably Aurora.
Yeah, top two.
Yeah, probably.
Came up with an answer.
Yeah.
But is got your daughter on it, hasn't it, Aurora?
Yes. When she was 7, she sang Aurora and harmonies. I think I managed to get her doing about 6 tracks of one and two tracks of a harmony, or 6 and 4 or something crazy, and she did a great job. It's amazing.
Steve, what's your favourite track on the album?
No, I'm going to go with Falling from the Stars.
Another banger.
With the video.
Quality
We talked about the video in the
about
last
that last
podcast.
week, didn't we?
Yeah.
It's just a brilliant song as well. I mean, it's another one. Where did the inspiration for that one come from, Nigel?
Lyrically, that is probably one of my favourite songs I've ever written, actually, Falling from the Stars, because it actually, I mean, it's got alien vibe in it, so obviously there's that, but it's not just that, right? It's this sort of bigger philosophical, we're just falling from the stars. Inspiration for that, I mean, one's personal relationships are very much a big driver of these types of things, right? And the chorus there is sort of just, I don't know, about seeing people, I don't know, go through life and the struggles they have, and obviously it sort of all feeds into the lyrics that become that song where, hey little sister, kind of like, nobody can do it, you're doing you the way that you have to do you, right? That's basically what that chorus is saying. It's just saying, like, the way that you do you is special, and that's how it is, and just be that and allow that to shine. We're all just falling from the stars. Like, who the hell knows what we're here doing? We're just trying our best, just doing that thing. That's the sentiment of the song. So I think, that obviously is sort of, very much a personal relationship thing, and a big part of that feeds into a lot of different songs.
I think my other, from a fan's point of view again, I think my other 2 favourite songs on that album are Easing My Soul, which I know Ali wrote.
Yeah, lovely
which
song.
is just, I mean, it's a grower. Like, it just keeps
it's a
growing,
beautiful
that song.
Beautiful
Amazing.
song.
And he wrote that a long, long time ago, which he was telling me about as well. And then the other one, which I think is an absolute triumph, is the title track with Jess on it. I mean, that as a song, as a piece of songwriting and a song, is just a symphony. And then when she comes in at the end, it's like, oh, well, it just smacked you in the face.
I remember.
Goose pimples.
Yeah.
I was driving around. We'd had the song nearing completion. Like, had it sort of, Steve had done his stuff. Most people had done their stuff on it, and I was driving around going, "Oh, there's something missing. I want something." And I just suddenly, I was like, I just want this female voice, and I just knew straight away. I was like, okay, I'm going to get in touch with Jess up. I've known Jess for years and years and years, and I mean, me and Ali and Steve sometimes used to go and do the PA for her band back in the day. Ended up sleeping in fields and whatever as we sort of go around the West Country, sort of doing the PA for the Jess Upton band. But her voice was just always amazing, always has been and still is. So yeah, she just sent back this stuff that just just like, oh my God, that's it. But yeah, that song, I mean, that's actually, in terms of a sort of, again, emotional sort of thing, that was very much when my mother-in-law passed away, actually, and it was something that my wife said to my mother-in-law, which was kind of like, I'll see you on the other side. And I literally heard her say that in the room not long before she was sort of passing away. And my brain just took that and I had this song written. My wife came back to LA then a few days later, and I had the whole song written in like one day. It wasn't quite a dream. I've had those dreams, Steve, as well, where you literally, today's the day was one of those. Today's the day was just literally in a dream. That's why it changes speed and does all that weird stuff. You'd never do that normally, right? I literally, the whole thing was just a dream. And I was lucky enough to be able to remember most of it. But to the other side wasn't quite as much as like, oh, it's one single dream, but it was very much this sort of response to this thing, and about seeing you on the other side, and that's what it's all about, and that whole kind of thing. So that was very much written in a moment, for a moment, and for somebody, really, which was kind of cool. So,
and it's and where it is like to end the album on the outro of that song with Jess is just like, if you want to finish an album, that is how you finish an album. It's like that. And it just leaves you in this space, like, you just feel like, I don't know, you're just drifting. It's like you're just like left hanging, like, just incredible, really. Yeah.
Well, I think the
I'd
other
say lyrically,
really
some of those songs are the ones that I'm most proud of, I think.
I think the other thing that's really clever about finishing the album on that song, or any album that finishes on a biggie like that, is you want to go back and listen to the album again, because you want to get to that last bit, like the journey. You want to kind of do it again and again. So it's really clever composition. And what's the so go on. So are you allowed to give us any hints on songs coming up?
We've done a cover.
We have done a cover.
Yeah, we've done a cover.
Yes. Which we've done a few of in the past, right?
That'll be out soon, actually. Before, it's like a totally separate thing to a whole other body of work that we've been working on.
Yeah,
we can't really talk about.
So we have a whole other body of
yet.
work coming up, probably later, I guess, hopefully in not too much longer, a few more months this year, which, well, that'll just be a whole thing in and as of itself.
But this first thing is a different thing to the later thing.
Well, I think
there are new songs as well, and there's new stuff that we're in the works with as well. That'll probably be a bit later.
That's an even longer thing. Yeah.
We're gonna do a whole episode on cover versions, because again, that's like,
so. All right, well, that's great. Well, we'll have to knock that out.
And you've done some bangers over the years. But let's we're almost at time. Let's wrap up. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to start with Steve, so that Nigel's got a bit of time to think.
Thanks,
and Steve
mate.
loves it when I put him on the spot. Favorite song lyrics of all time, Steve?
What, by Electrasy?
Anybody?
I'm going to go with Electrasy then. Queen of the Crimson Nile, because I like how it puts you in a place that's crazy, and you get a sense of the personality of the person or the people in the song, and I love that.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
And it's not obvious. It's like you can fill all the gaps in your head of like traveling to this place, and there's people in the song, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah. Nige, favourite song and song lyrics of all time?
Well, song lyrics, I'm probably going to go something with like Time by Pink Floyd, and then one day you find 10 years have gone behind it. It's just beautifully written, just so, again, big philosophical stuff, but with a really lovely poetical sort of like vibe to it. Favorite song ever, which probably have nothing to do with the lyrics. I don't even know if I could get even vaguely narrower than that, but let's just go with Time by Pink Floyd as far as lyrics go. Lyrics, as far as favorite song, other than that, who knows? There's just too much to even close
Too
to.
many.
Rejecting me.
Too many.
Well, I'm trying, but my brain is drawing a blank. I'd definitely pick some stuff off that Nirvana album. There's all sorts of stuff. It couldn't even begin to.
That was
what about you,
era.
Pete?
You can pick any song off Pearl Jam's album.
Oh, sorry.
Pearl Jam's album 10. You can pick any song off that.
Yeah.
Because it's just,
great stuff there.
lyrically, it's genius, and also musically, it's genius. But I think it's just a moment in time for a lot of people as well. It just gets spot in it.
Yeah.
Which I think
absolutely.
a lot of Electrasy songs and albums do. If you look at the comments on TikTok or YouTube or wherever I'm reading people's feedback on particular songs, they always talk about their favourite Electrasy songs as being like, oh, a moment in time. Or, last year we had that couple say, can we do Morning Afterglow for our first dance, because it was a song playing moment when we were teenagers or something like that. And I think songs just kind of hit people at a moment, don't they? And the lyrics tend to resonate with them. So it's all good. Right, chaps, I think we're done. I think that's a good,
nice one.
Good 30-odd minutes of gossip in. Next week, haven't quite decided what we're going to talk about yet, but what a joy. Go and Nigel's got to do the rest of his day now, because it's lunchtime in LA.
I have a sales meeting I have to do in about 10 minutes.
Much better than talking about music.
So there you go.
Nice. All right, boys, take care. Have a really good rest of your days.
Lovely jubbly. Cheers, Pete. Cheers, Steve.